The Roy siblings are eager to present the other side, as if this were an episode of Crossfire or a Sunday talk show. After Ewan Roy delivers an unflattering remembrance of his brother Logan in front of friends, family, and a Labrador's pile of senators on tonight's Succession. "It was a good hard take that you gave," Greg hilariously assures his grandfather afterward. Roman has created just such a monument to his father's excellence, neatly condensed on index cards that likely read like a heavily edited Wikipedia page, sprinkling with joyful recollections that are carefully curated. Roman is unable to deliver this eulogy because a significant portion of him perished with his father, and no one is willing to hand the torch to Connor and his formally inventive comments. So it is left to Kendall, who decides to speak impromptu and throw his brother's note cards away. The speech is amazing, even if it was written in a straightforward manner by a person with greater intelligence than Kendall, who lacks the poetry to refer to money as the corpuscles of life, and is still, at best, the lead vocalist of the tribute band that Matsson so cunningly referred to as he and his siblings. Nevertheless, the show's creator, Jesse Armstrong, utilizes this speech to condense his key observations about both America and Kendall, who keeps edging closer to the show's center. Kendall's assessment of Logan is similar to that of his uncle Ewan. Ewan says of Logan he was mean, and he made but a mean estimation of the world, whereas Kendall refers to him as a brute, which sounds both more economical and more intimate. While Kendall endured that harshness every day, whether he was portraying a battered protege, an exiled junkie, or a corporate rebel without a cause, Ewan separated himself from his brother by country. The eulogy Kendall offers might be liberally applied to the other colonists and business leaders who founded this nation using a terrible force of will that a person of conscience could never equal. Roman was going to make the strongest case for his father, according to the bits we hear of him practicing his speech. Logan's greatness was connected to all the enduring things he created, regardless of how he went about doing it. Kendall travels there as well, but he has studied his father sufficiently to know that his vision and toxicity are connected. A godlike drive to create and destroy at his whim, without much consideration for who might be harmed. As we frequently see in this episode, one advantage of enormous money is that it walls you off from the negative effects of amassing it. Here is the speech's most important passage. "He brought about life. He created my 3 siblings and me. He did really possess a terrific force. Additionally, a tremendous ambition that can push you aside. But it was merely human nature, the one to exist, to be noticed, and to act. But by God, I hope it's in me. People may now want to care for and prune the memory of him, to depreciate that force, that great, dreadful force of him. With the exception of a small-minded deceit that always comes back to bite them in the behind. These failed children have none of the characteristics that made Logan's Waystar such a glorious, dreadful engine for change. We could not possibly forget that Kendall was powerless to prevent his ex-wife from taking their kids out of the city rather than to their grandfather's burial on the same day. His pissy plea to speak with a family lawyer about regaining custody from Rava, as well as his threat to collapse in front of the car, are both hilariously ineffective. Those are tantrums, people. Furthermore, when Jess, his long-standing assistant, attempts and fails to hide her resignation later in the calendar, Kendall has another fit and yells at her for losing the extraordinary access that no other employer could grant her. Never mind that she witnessed what could have been the end of democracy, which was the most remarkable access she has ever had. As there is just one episode remaining, Church and State at least has Succession in mind, as the Roy siblings plot various schemes while grieving the man who reared and destroyed them. Roman fucked it, as Kendall puts it to him so clearly and accurately. Mencken may have received a premature call as a result of his devil-may-care impishness on election night, but he picked the wrong time to show his vulnerability. Under normal circumstances, it's customary and understandable for eulogists to cry during their speeches. However, Roman understood when he accepted the gig that his performance would be crucial. See Shivy cry, see Kenny die, see Roman the showman light up the sky. And he fumbles it. Kendall now has to deal with Mencken, whose assurances about blocking the Gojo deal are suddenly hazy, and Shiv, who is advising Matsson to hire an American CEO to appease the ostensible president-elect regarding the Waystar deal. This opens up a clearer path for Kendall to take the reins on his own, which he had planned to do anyway. Next week's episode of Succession might end with Kendall convincing the board to reject Matsson's offer, or possibly raising the company's value enough for him to acquire Matsson outright. Or maybe it ends with Shiv assuming the CEO position after demonstrating her ability to compromise her values and make friends with the fastest she once attempted to avoid for a photo. I'm horrible at predicting the future of TV series, but the evidence doesn't support any of those possibilities. The Roy siblings are all helpful stooges for guys like Matsson and Mencken. They offered nothing less than extraordinary access, but as their brief interaction at the funeral event reveals, there isn't really much tying them to a long-term relationship with the children. The remaining Roys are not serious people, unimaginative, helpless, and feckless, as they can see as clearly as Logan saw. If any of them had been truly qualified, they would have received that kiss from Daddy. What will they have actually inherited, though? Armstrong isn't too preoccupied with the Roy family drama to fail to see the bigger picture of Logan's genuine impact. This entire episode has been set in the background of ATN sowing the kind of turmoil that undermines democracy, something we shouldn't take for granted. Matsson tells Shiv, "You are nearly as mature a democracy as Botswana," implying that America is a youthful nation and more susceptible than we think. The burning of a Wisconsin election center may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because both the Bush v. Gore ruling and the January 6th uprising are recent events, and since we cannot agree on whether or not either of them was harmful for democracy. It has been awful watching Succession these past several weeks because it feels so similar. But we'll have to ponder whether it matters for people like the Roys. Being among the super elite has the huge benefit of not mattering whether the guard changes. On the day of Logan's funeral, New York City is engulfed in turmoil, which is visible from the limo, above the streets, and outside the barriers. The mourners have completely removed themselves from the world they have made. There is a little measure of satisfaction in witnessing the outcomes when Roman ultimately decides to disregard those safeguards and unleashes rage and fecklessness on the helpless individuals he holds in such disdain. He is one of the few billionaires who is foolish enough to experiment and learn. It is rather obvious why Shiv was reluctant to inform her brothers of her pregnancy. Jerry's response to her own query concerning the reactions of her co-workers, the executives, to Logan's passing was Stockholm Syndrome crossed with a little China Syndrome. Excellent episode for Marcia. After Logan's death, she returned home with a frosty disposition. But when Caroline brought Carrie to the argument with his other wives and mistresses, she showed some mercy. They both chuckle sarcastically when they hear that Logan clenches his teeth at night. She also sets aside their animosity with a moving admission when she runs into a helpless Shiv at the graveyard. "I love him very dearly. He is sorely missed. Hear me so much, and he wounded your hearts as well." Marcia's realization that she shared this man with other people and that they, too, were feeling her ambivalence serves as a connecting thread between the two situations. Although Ewan's statement is also expertly crafted, the line about Logan feeling guilty over his sister's polio death sticks out. According to Ewan, he always thought that he brought the polio with him. This brings to mind a crucial statement made by Kendall last week regarding inheritance and family. Maybe the poison drips through. When Shiv has the chance to speak, she tells a story about playing outside her dad's office, presumably in an attempt to make a light jest about his fiery nature, but it falls flat. The crucial line refers to the incident at the family's country estate, when her father broke a promise to her. "It was warm when he let you in and the sun was shining," she claims. "The light made it feel warm. It's lovely, like the sun shining on you. It's then quite cold and he forgets about you." Logan's mausoleum is really incredible in every way. The garish size of it, the fact that he purchased it from an online pet supplies vendor, and the number of empty wall spaces. Roman is unable to join in the fun, though. He even lacks the motivation to enter. Regarding him skipping the major event, Shiv and Tom. "When he was alive, you would never have dared to skip his funeral. Your dad has lost a lot of influence over the past few days."